Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Welcome to the Infowars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Monday, July 20th, 2015. Here are our top stories.
Tonight, governors call for National Guard offices to be armed following the Chattanooga murders. Then, the price of gold plummets.
Reports that the military and militia got into a firefight in Whitney, Texas. And Wesley Clark and crew call to lock up their political opposition.
If these people are radicalized and they don't support the United States and they're disloyal to the United States as a matter of principle, fine, that's their right. It's our right and our obligation to segregate them from the normal community for the duration of the conflict.
That's next on the Infowars Nightly News.
To celebrate the birth of our country and give a big thanks to all the info warriors out there, we are now offering free shipping on every item shipped out of the InfowarsStore.com warehouse. That's free shipping on all t-shirts, books, and DVDs. Free shipping on Molon Labe and 1776 belt buckles, which are also 25% off while supplies last. Free shipping on all of our InfowarsLife.com nutraceuticals. If it's in the InfowarsStore.com warehouse, it's shipping for free, all during the month of July. It's our way of saying thanks to the true heart and soul of this operation, who stand beside us and support us as we wage an info war for liberty and freedom for all. InfowarsStore.com, free shipping for the month of July.
Well, today we have more news on the aftermath of the economic collapse, both in the Chinese stock market as well as in Greece. Also, updates to what happened with the terrorism scares in Chattanooga, the way that's being spun, the way it's being used perhaps by our government. First, let's take a look at what's happening with gold. Gold has hit a 5-year low. It's gone under $1,100 because of massive Chinese selling. The report gold prices have plunged as much as 4% to their lowest in more than 5 years on Monday. This is because of Chinese offloading of the metal, they say. And this is the way it is reported by Reuters. They say investors have been finding less and less reason to hold gold as an insurance against risk, with the dollar strengthening and ahead of what is expected to be the first increase in U.S. interest rates for nearly a decade. And of course, last Wednesday, Janet Yellen, head of the Federal Reserve, said that she was anticipating that sometime before the end of this year, they would raise interest rates after keeping them at zero for a very long time. Now, whether or not that happens, they're portraying this as people fleeing gold and going to the security of a stock market. Seriously? I mean, I'm not an economist. I'm not an investment analyst. But I look at this, and when I see the Chinese massively offloading gold, understand that in the crash of the Chinese stock market, they lost the equivalent of 13 Greek economies. They had to cover those margins somehow. Everybody, when this was happening, was very concerned about it because they were talking about how leveraged the Chinese stock market was, like our market in 1929. Fortunately, perhaps, they had a lot of holding in gold, and maybe that allowed them to keep their stability. Nevertheless, it is now at a very low point. Perhaps it is at a good point to buy. I don't know. I'm not selling any. But if we look at what happened in Greece, another report from Reuters talks about the prime minister and calls him the man who cost Greece billions. And of course, to put a number on it, that number of billions is 33 billion. Understand that in just 3 weeks period of time, they went from a deal that was going to cost them 53 billion euros to a deal that cost them 86 billion euros. That's 33 billion euros increase. That's a 62% increase in just 3 weeks. Now, of course, there's a lot of punishment involved in that. Bankers telling this upstart party that they're going to get in line. But of course, there's also a lot of misdirection and collusion on the part of the prime minister. We saw vacillation, then we saw capitulation. We saw them saying there would be no capital controls, there'd be no cash controls, and then later that evening on a Sunday, enforcing cash controls. We saw a referendum where the people voted whether or not they were going to accept that deal. People said no, then the prime minister said yes. This is the way that it always works out. They are always, the bankers that is, are always able to get the Marxists to do what they're unable to do. In many cases, if it was a conservative prime minister, a lot of people would have their guard up. They would be looking for someone who was giving the banks everything that they wanted and more, but not when you have a Marxist as the head of it. And this fellow is definitely a Marxist. Listen to the description in the Reuters article. They say until a renovation a few months ago, a portrait of Che Guevara hung outside Tsipras's office. Quote, at 16, I read Marx and believed capitalism would end and we would go to the next stage of society, socialism. To me, this was an absolute. Very much like Hugo Chavez, the friend of the bankers, who pretended to be a friend of the people. Of course, that's the way the Marxists always run. They establish themselves with the help of a few bankers, just like Lenin did, just like Hugo Chavez did. They returned 700% return on investment to the bankers in Venezuela. Meanwhile, the people went begging and are now still going begging for water, for medicine, for food. We're seeing the same thing happening in Greece. Understand that that original deal of 53 billion euros was about equivalent to the hard assets that the bankers and the crony capitalists are now taking out of Greece. They offered them 53 billion total. Now they're going to take out 50 billion in hard assets and then put the rest of it on the credit card. It's always a Cloward and Piven strategy. They encourage, with the help of the socialist government, they encourage the people to go create a welfare state. They build that welfare state until it gets to the stage of collapse, and then they come in and take the hard assets. Homes, as we see. Also, the power company in Greece. That's a very symbolic grab there, but it is a massive economic grab, taking the electricity generation of Greece, as well as the islands. Look at this story from Infowars. Warren Buffett reportedly is buying a Greek island for 15 million euros. The name of the island in English is St. Thomas. Of course, Johnny Depp has also purchased an island in Greece for 4.2 million, and Brad and Angelina are in the market. They say dozens of islands are currently up for sale in Greece. Yes, it's a fire sale, and we see all the elites, all the Hollywood stars jumping in to take advantage of that. Now, this is exactly what we're seeing and what we're going to see as we roll down this Cloward and Piven strategy, as the globalists take over and seize our assets after they drive us into bankruptcy with massive loans over decades, compounded with interest. But there's another way that we see a parallel to the transatlantic, the trans-Pacific partnerships that are being done. Of course, those are being negotiated in secret by lobbyists. Our legislators are not involved in that, but of course, our legislators sometimes do get in on the fire sale. They do get in on the backroom deals. And one of the ways that they do that here domestically is through an organization called ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. Here's how that works.
We can't show you what's behind this closed door.
Georgia legislators are here participating in discussions.
So why can't the people who elected them see the process?
This is a private meeting.
What happens in these back rooms?
There are votes taken that have the corporate folks at the same table voting with the legislators on what bills to pick. They absolutely vote, and the truth be told, they write the bills.
ALEC bills come complete with blanks where legislators need only fill in their state name.
And again, as you watch that report, you notice how they have the bill completely written. You just fill in the blank for the state that you're involved in. We've seen this before. We've seen this at the international level, quite frankly. We've seen it with the UN and their war on drugs. They wrote 10 years before Richard Nixon created the war on drugs, declared the war on drugs. They wrote that in the UN. They had the 4 schedules that we divide drugs into for the war on drugs, for the prohibition of drugs. We've also seen it happen with Agenda 21. People don't want to believe that we have template laws being made by people who aren't our legislators. Well, that's happening all the time. The difference with the bills that we see now that are coming out with the trade treaties with the transatlantic, trans-Pacific partnership is they're eliminating the middleman. they're not really including the legislators when they write these bills. They're going to write them without them and then just present it to them and have them pass it. Kind of puts a new spin on what Nancy Pelosi said, well, we have to slow this down a little bit and get a better deal for the American people. No, she's getting a better deal for themselves because they're being pushed out of the negotiations as far as the international treaties for the international government goes, because our state legislators, our national legislators are going to be outside of the loop in that, because now we're moving to the next level. But it reminds me when I look at this of what Otto von Bismarck said about how you don't want to see a law being made. This is corruption that's been going on for a long time, but they're now taking it to a completely different level. As he pointed out, it was like watching sausage being made. You don't want to know how that's done.
From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape, but that we can fight back against. Made with organic and wild cultivated herbs and manufactured in the USA, the new Infowars Life Lung Cleanse is here in a convenient spray bottle that can be brought with you throughout any toxic environment. Now available exclusively at InfowarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.